She was an invisible child, made of absence, silence, and courage without an audience. But that night, the sky painted in pink told her that something was about to happen. She followed the premonition to a hospital, touched the hand of a man in a coma, and spoke as if commanding destiny. Chapter 1. The Girl Nobody Saw. The Boston morning wore a peculiar shade of pink that day, the kind that made Lily Walker stop in her tracks. At 15, she had learned to trust these rare moments, when the universe seemed to whisper directly to her soul. Standing barefoot on the cold pavement of Tremont Street, she lifted her face toward the strange glow that bathed the city skyline. "Something's coming," she murmured, clutching the frayed edges of her oversized sweater. Most Bostonians hurried past without a second glance at the thin, disheveled girl. To them, she was just another shadow in the urban landscape, another problem too complicated to acknowledge. Lily had been invisible for so long that she sometimes wondered if she would eventually fade away completely. Her life hadn't always been this way. 3 years ago, she had a home, a family, a place where she belonged, but the foster care system had failed her in ways she couldn't bring herself to remember, and the streets had become her reluctant sanctuary. She knew every alley, every abandoned doorway, every public bathroom where she could wash her face without being chased away. She knew which restaurants threw away perfectly good food, and which shelter volunteers might slip her an extra blanket without asking questions. Today, however, something pulled her away from her usual routes. The strange pink sky seemed to beckon her toward Beacon Hill, where people lived in townhouses worth more money than Lily could even imagine. It wasn't an area she typically ventured into. The security guards and doormen were quick to move along anyone who didn't belong. "This is crazy," she told herself as her bare feet carried her up the sloping streets. "What am I even doing here?" But the feeling in her chest only grew stronger, an inexplicable urgency that quickened her steps despite her reservations. It was like being pulled by an invisible thread, a sensation she had experienced only a handful of times in her young life. Each time, something significant had happened. The last time she felt this way, she had found Joey, the 3-legged dog who had been her loyal companion for 6 months, before animal control took him away. As she approached Massachusetts General Hospital, one of the most prestigious medical facilities in the country, the sensation peaked. The massive complex of buildings loomed before her, intimidating in its clinical perfection. People in expensive suits and white coats streamed in and out of the revolving doors. Luxury cars pulled up to the entrance, discharging passengers who carried flowers and gift baskets. Lily hesitated at the edge of the property. She didn't belong here. She would be noticed, questioned, probably escorted out or worse, but the strange certainty in her heart wouldn't relent. "Just go," she whispered to herself, summoning courage from some hidden reservoir. "Whatever's pulling you here matters." Slipping through the automatic doors behind a large group of visitors, Lily entered the main lobby. The sudden warmth enveloped her, along with the sharp scent of disinfectant and the hushed tones of important conversations. She kept her head down, moving with purpose as if she belonged, as if she were heading to visit someone specific. Strangely, no one stopped her. A security guard glanced her way, but then turned to help an elderly woman with directions. A nurse rushed past, too busy with a clipboard to notice the barefoot girl in worn clothes. Lily had perfected the art of invisibility over the years, but this seemed different, almost as if something was helping her remain undetected. In the elevator, she stood in the corner, making herself small as people in expensive perfumes and aftershaves, discussed medical terms she didn't understand. She didn't know which floor to choose, but when a doctor pressed the button for the 8th floor, Lily felt that same tug in her chest. The sign on the 8th floor read, "Neurology Intensive Care Unit." The hallways were quieter here, more serious. Monitors beeped steadily from rooms where life and death played their eternal chess match. Lily moved carefully, her heart pounding so loudly she feared someone would hear it. Then she saw him through a half-open door, a man lying still in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines that blinked and hummed. Though his face was partially obscured by tubes and his body seemed diminished somehow, Lily recognized him instantly. She had never met him, yet she knew him with absolute certainty: Thomas Mitchell, the tech mogul whose face had appeared on magazines and billboards throughout the city, the philanthropist who had donated millions to Boston's urban development programs, the visionary whose companies had revolutionized renewable energy technology. And now, according to the whispers she overheard, the vegetative patient who had shown no signs of consciousness for the past 4 years. Lily stood frozen in the doorway, suddenly questioning her instincts. What was she doing here? What could she possibly have to do with this man? She was about to retreat when a voice startled her. "Excuse me, but visitors aren't allowed in this unit without proper clearance." Dr. Sarah Coleman approached with a clipboard in hand, her expression professional but firm. At 42, she had built her reputation as one of the most respected neurologists on the East Coast. The Mitchell case had been her most challenging and most frustrating for years. I'm sorry," Lily stammered, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "I was just—" Dr. Coleman studied the girl's disheveled appearance with a mixture of suspicion and concern. "Are you lost? How did you get up here?" Before Lily could answer, a commotion erupted down the hall. A striking woman in her late 20s, dressed in designer clothes and radiating authoritative energy, emerged from the elevator flanked by 2 men in business suits. "Where is my father's medical team?" the woman demanded at the nurse's station. "I received a call about changes to his care plan that I did not authorize." Dr. Coleman sighed. "That's Emma Mitchell, Thomas's daughter. I need to handle this. Wait here. Security will escort you downstairs." As the doctor hurried toward the escalating situation, Lily knew she had only moments before she would be removed from the building. Propelled by the same inexplicable certainty that had guided her here, she slipped into Thomas Mitchell's room and quietly closed the door behind her. The private suite was luxurious by hospital standards, spacious, with a window overlooking the Boston Common and furnishings that spoke of wealth and influence. But all the money in the world hadn't been able to wake Thomas Mitchell from his persistent vegetative state. Lily approached the bed cautiously, taking in the man's appearance. He was thin but still handsome, with silver threaded through his dark hair. His face, though slack in unconsciousness, retained traces of strength and character. Machines monitored his vital signs, which all appeared stable in their haunting consistency. "Mr. Mitchell," Lily whispered, not knowing what else to say. She reached out hesitantly, her small hand hovering over his. The inexplicable connection she felt seemed to pulse between them like an electrical current. Without fully understanding why, she gently placed her palm against his. The contact sent a jolt through her entire body, not painful but intense, like touching a live wire carrying emotions rather than electricity. She gasped, instinctively trying to pull away, but found she couldn't break the connection. Images flashed through her mind, a younger Thomas laughing with a little girl on his shoulders. Thomas arguing fiercely in a boardroom, Thomas alone in a vast house, staring out at the ocean with profound sadness. Thomas in his car, distracted by a phone call, then blinding headlights. "You need to wake up now, sir," Lily heard herself say, her voice surprisingly steady and clear. "It's time to come back." The monitors continued their rhythmic beeping. Nothing visibly changed. Lily stood there, her hand still covering his, wondering if she had imagined the strange connection. Then, almost imperceptibly, she felt his fingers twitch beneath hers. Outside the room, Emma Mitchell's voice grew louder. "I don't care about the protocol, doctor. I've been managing my father's affairs for 4 years and A sudden, urgent alarm from one of the machines interrupted her. Lily jumped back from the bed as the door flew open and medical personnel rushed in. "His EEG is spiking," someone called out. "We're getting significant brain activity. BP rising, heart rate increasing," another voice reported. "Doctor." Coleman pushed through to the bedside, her experienced eyes darting between the patient and the monitors. "Thomas, can you hear me?" In the chaos, no one noticed Lily pressing herself against the wall, wide-eyed and trembling. She watched in astonishment as Thomas Mitchell's eyelids fluttered, then slowly opened for the first time in 4 years. "Get the crash cart." "Doctor." Coleman began, then stopped abruptly. "Wait, he's responsive. Thomas, if you can hear me, blink once." Thomas blinked deliberately, his gaze unfocused but unmistakably conscious. The room erupted in controlled medical urgency. Emma Mitchell stood frozen in the doorway, her perfect composure shattered by shock. "Dad?" she whispered, a word she hadn't spoken aloud in years. As the medical team worked to assess Thomas's condition, Lily saw her opportunity to slip away unnoticed. The strange mission that had drawn her here seemed complete, though she couldn't begin to understand it. She edged toward the door, her heart pounding with the enormity of what had just happened. But as she reached the threshold, Thomas Mitchell's hoarse voice rose above the commotion. his first words after years of silence. "The girl," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "Where's the girl with the light?" All heads turned, searching the room. And for the first time in years, Lily Walker found herself truly seen. Chapter 2. Awakening. "Someone find that girl." "Doctor," Coleman commanded, her professional demeanor momentarily disrupted by the extraordinary events unfolding before her. But Lily had already vanished, a skill perfected through years of necessity. She fled down the emergency stairwell, her bare feet barely making a sound on the cold concrete steps. Her heart hammered against her ribs, not from exertion but from the overwhelming enormity of what had just happened. Had she really done that? Had she actually awakened a man from a 4-year coma with nothing but a touch and a few words? It seemed impossible, yet she had felt it. That inexplicable connection, that transfer of energy that defied all logical explanation. By the time security personnel began searching the hospital grounds, Lily was already blocks away, blending into the anonymity of downtown Boston. She made her way to the public garden, collapsing onto a bench near the duck pond. Her hands were still trembling. "What just happened?" she whispered to herself, watching the ripples spread across the water's surface. The pink tint had faded from the sky, leaving behind the ordinary blue of a clear autumn day. Everything looked normal again, but Lily knew that nothing would ever be the same. Back at Massachusetts General, chaos of the controlled medical variety had erupted on the 8th floor. Thomas Mitchell's sudden return to consciousness after 4 years in a persistent vegetative state was unprecedented. Dr. Sarah Coleman, who had built her career on following scientific protocols, found herself witnessing something that defied everything she understood about neurology. "I want a full neurological workup immediately," she ordered the team. "EEG, MRI, comprehensive cognitive assessment, everything. And I want to know how that girl got into this room." Emma Mitchell stood at her father's bedside, her perfectly manicured hand covering her mouth, tears streaming unchecked down her carefully made-up face. "Dad?" she repeated, as if saying the word enough times might cement the miracle before her. "It's me, Emma." Thomas's eyes moved slowly to his daughter's face. Recognition flickered there, along with confusion. "Emma," he rasped, his voice rough from years of disuse. "You've changed." Of course she had changed. She had been 24 when her father's car collided with a truck on the Mass Turnpike, leaving him with severe brain trauma that the best neurosurgeons in the country couldn't fully repair. Now she was 28 and had spent the intervening years transforming herself from a carefree art history graduate into the interim CEO of Mitchell Innovations, the energy technology company her father had built from nothing. "Mr. Mitchell," Dr. Coleman interjected gently, "do you know where you are?" Thomas's gaze shifted slowly around the room. "Hospital," he said, each word clearly requiring effort. "How long?" Dr. Coleman exchanged glances with Emma. This was always a delicate moment in recovery cases, though none had been quite like this one. "You've been unconscious for 4 years, Mr. Mitchell. You were in a car accident in 2021. Today is October 15, 2025. Thomas closed his eyes, absorbing this information. When he opened them again, they were clearer, more focused. "The girl," he said more insistently this time. "Find her. Important." "What girl, Dad?" Emma asked, her brow furrowing. "There was no girl here." "There was," he insisted, his voice gaining strength. "Young, sad eyes, she called me back." Dr. Coleman pulled Emma aside, while the nursing staff continued to monitor Thomas's vitals. "Your father is experiencing confusion, which is normal after prolonged unconsciousness. He may have vivid dreams or hallucinations that feel real to him." "But how is this possible?" Emma whispered. "For 4 years, you told me he would never wake up. You said his brain activity indicated no hope of recovery." Dr. Coleman's professional composure couldn't entirely mask her own bewilderment. "I don't have an explanation yet. In 30 years of practice, I've never seen anything like this. We need to run tests, monitor him closely. And yes," she added, glancing toward the door, "we need to review the security footage and find out who was in this room." While the medical team worked to stabilize and assess Thomas Mitchell, Lily Walker returned to her temporary shelter, an abandoned boathouse near the Charles River that had somehow escaped the attention of city officials. The small space held her few possessions: a worn sleeping bag, a backpack containing a change of clothes, a toothbrush, and her most prized possession, a dog-eared copy of The Secret Garden that had been her mother's favorite book. Lily curled up on her sleeping bag, hugging the book to her chest. The strange energy that had guided her actions all day had dissipated, leaving her exhausted and confused. Sleep claimed her quickly, but it was restless, filled with dreams of hospital corridors that stretched endlessly, and a voice calling for her from somewhere she couldn't reach. She awoke at dawn to the sound of rain pattering against the boathouse roof. For a moment, the events of the previous day seemed like part of her dreams, but the lingering sensation in her hand, the one that had touched Thomas Mitchell, told her otherwise. I should stay away, she told herself as she folded her sleeping bag. Whatever that was, it's not my business anymore. But even as she said the words, she knew she would return to the hospital. Something had connected her to Thomas Mitchell, something beyond rational explanation. She needed to understand what and why. After washing her face in a public restroom and changing into her cleanest shirt, a faded blue Boston Red Sox tee she'd found in a donation bin, Lily made her way back to Massachusetts General. This time she was more cautious, observing the entrance from across the street. Security had visibly increased overnight, with guards checking IDs at every entrance. Looking for someone? The voice startled her. Lily turned to find an elderly woman in hospital volunteer attire, a pink smock with a name tag that read, Betty, standing beside her. The woman's kind eyes crinkled at the corners as she smiled. "No, Lily began. "You're her, aren't you?" Betty interrupted, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The girl everyone's looking for, the one who was in Mr. Mitchell's room when he woke up." Lily stiffened, ready to run, but something in Betty's expression stopped her. There was no judgment there, only a kind of wondering curiosity. "How did you know?" Lily asked cautiously. Betty chuckled. "I've volunteered here for 20 years, dear. Not much happens that I don't hear about. Besides, I saw you yesterday slipping out of the service entrance like you had the devil on your heels." She studied Lily's face for a moment. "You did something remarkable in there, didn't you?" Lily looked down at her hands. "I don't know what I did." "Well, whatever it was, Mr. Mitchell is asking for you. Quite insistently, from what I hear." Betty reached into her pocket and pulled out a hospital volunteer badge. "This is my spare. Put it on, keep your head down, and take the service elevator to the 8th floor. It's the only one without cameras." Lily stared at the badge in disbelief. "Why would you help me?" Betty's smile deepened, revealing a wisdom born of long experience. "Because in 20 years of watching people come and go from this hospital, I've learned to recognize when something truly extraordinary is happening, and because that man has been lying there for 4 years, with some of the best doctors in the world unable to help him. Then you show up and suddenly he's awake and asking for you." She pressed the badge into Lily's hand. "Some things can't be explained by medical science, dear." With trembling fingers, Lily pinned the badge to her shirt. "Thank you. Just return it on your way out," Betty said with a wink. "And Lily, whatever gift you have, it's important. Don't be afraid of it." Lily started. "How do you know my name?" "I didn't," Betty replied simply. "Until just now." Before Lily could process this strange exchange, Betty was already walking away, greeting patients and visitors with her warm smile as if nothing unusual had occurred. Following Betty's instructions, Lily made her way to the service elevator, her heart racing as the numbers climbed to the 8th floor. When the doors opened, she peered cautiously into the corridor. It was quieter than the previous day, though staff still moved efficiently between rooms. She could hear the murmur of voices from Thomas Mitchell's room, one of them his, stronger than before. "I'm telling you, she was real," Thomas was saying, his voice tinged with frustration. "She had light around her, not physically, but something I could sense. She called me back." "Dad, you've been unconscious for 4 years," Emma's patient but strained voice replied. "The brain creates vivid imagery during recovery. Dr. Coleman explained this." "I know what I experienced, Emma," Thomas insisted. "And I need to find her." Lily hesitated in the hallway, suddenly uncertain. What would happen if she walked into that room again? What would she say? How could she explain something she didn't understand herself? As she stood there, paralyzed by indecision, a tall man in an expensive suit emerged from the elevator. His resemblance to Thomas was unmistakable, though his features were harder, less compassionate. He strode toward Thomas's room with the confidence of someone accustomed to command, nodding curtly to the staff who acknowledged him. "Mr. Mitchell," one of the nurses greeted him. "Your brother is doing remarkably well this morning." "So I've heard," the man replied, his tone neutral. "Quite the miracle." Something in his voice, A subtle undercurrent of tension caught Lily's attention. As he disappeared into Thomas's room, she overheard his greeting. "Well, big brother, you've certainly created quite a stir. The board members are all clamoring for information." "Robert," Thomas replied, his tone warming. "Good to see you. Have they found the girl yet?" "Still on about that, are you?" "There was no girl, Tom. Just a medical anomaly that Dr. Coleman will undoubtedly publish papers about for years to come." Lily backed away from the door, her mind racing. The man, Robert Mitchell, didn't seem nearly as pleased about his brother's miraculous recovery as one might expect. In fact, he seemed almost unsettled by it. As she turned to leave, she collided with someone, a nurse carrying a tray of medication. The tray clattered to the floor, pills scattering across the polished tiles. "I'm so sorry," Lily gasped, dropping to her knees to help gather the fallen medication. "It's all right," the nurse assured her, though her expression was harried. "These things happen." But the commotion had drawn attention. As Lily scrambled to collect the pills, she heard footsteps approaching, and then a voice that stopped her cold. "It's you," Thomas Mitchell said from the doorway of his room. He stood unsteadily, supported by Emma on one side and Dr. Coleman on the other, but his eyes were clear and fixed directly on Lily. "I knew you were real." Slowly, Lily rose to her feet, feeling the weight of multiple gazes upon her. Thomas's wondering, Emma's suspicious, Robert's calculating, and Dr. Coleman's professionally curious. "How did you get in here again?" Emma demanded. "Security is supposed to—" "Emma, stop," Thomas interrupted, his voice surprisingly commanding for someone who had been comatose just 24 hours earlier. "This is the girl I told you about, the one who woke me." In the silence that followed, Lily felt her invisibility strip away completely. For better or worse, she had been seen. And now there would be no going back to the shadows. Chapter 3. Questions without answers. The conference room on the hospital's administrative floor had never felt so charged with tension. Lily sat in an oversized chair, her feet barely touching the ground, surrounded by people whose combined annual incomes could probably fund a small country. Dr. Coleman sat directly across from her, a digital recorder placed conspicuously on the table between them. Emma Mitchell stood by the window, arms crossed, her expression oscillating between suspicion and bewilderment. Robert Mitchell occupied a corner, his presence somehow both removed and intensely focused. Only Thomas was absent, having been convinced to rest after the excitement of the morning. His insistence on speaking with Lily, however, had forced this impromptu meeting. "Let's start with the basics," Dr. Coleman said, her tone professional but kind. "Your name is Lily Walker, correct? And you're 15 years old?" Lily nodded, her fingers twisting the hem of her faded t-shirt. "And can you explain to us how you gained access to Mr. Mitchell's room yesterday and again today?" Lily hesitated, not wanting to get Betty in trouble. "I just walked in." Emma made a sound of disbelief. "Past security? Past the nurse's station? Into a restricted area of the neurology ward? You just walked in?" "Emma," Dr. Coleman cautioned, "let's keep this constructive." She turned back to Lily. "What made you come to see Mr. Mitchell specifically? Had you met him before?" "No," Lily replied, her voice small but steady. "I never met him. I just knew I needed to find him." "Knew how?" Robert asked, speaking for the first time. His voice was measured, calculating. Lily struggled to find words for something so inherently wordless. "I saw the sky turn pink yesterday morning, and I felt this pull, like something was calling me to come here." She looked down at her hands. "I can't explain it better than that. The sky was pink," Emma repeated flatly. "And that somehow led you to my father's hospital room." "I know how it sounds," Lily said, a flash of defiance crossing her face. "But it's what happened, and when I touched his hand I saw images, memories maybe, and I just knew he could hear me. So I told him to wake up, and he did." Dr. Coleman leaned forward, her scientific curiosity engaged despite her skepticism. "These images you mentioned, can you describe them?" Lily closed her eyes, recalling the vivid flashes. "I saw Mr. Mitchell with a little girl on his shoulders. She was laughing." She glanced at Emma, whose composed expression faltered slightly. "And I saw him in a big meeting room, arguing with people, and alone in a house by the ocean, looking sad. And then, headlights. Bright headlights." The room fell silent. Emma had gone pale, and even Robert looked unsettled. "Those are accurate memories," Emma finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. The beach house in Cape Cod. Dad would go there alone after Mom left. And the accident. The truck's headlights were the last thing he would have seen. This is absurd, Robert interjected, recovering his composure. The girl obviously researched Thomas before coming here. These are public details available to anyone with an internet connection. I don't have a phone, Lily said simply, or a computer, or anywhere to plug one in, even if I did. Dr. Coleman's gaze sharpened. What do you mean by that, Lily? Lily met the doctor's eyes directly, a quiet dignity in her posture despite her circumstances. I live on the streets, Dr. Coleman. Have for almost 3 years now. Another heavy silence fell over the room. Emma's expression shifted subtly, her suspicion giving way to something more complicated. Even Robert seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Dr. Coleman processed this information with professional neutrality. Are you currently in the foster care system, Lily? Is there someone we should contact? No, Lily replied firmly. I aged out. At 15? Emma asked skeptically. I didn't say it was legal, Lily responded, a hint of bitterness creeping into her voice. Just that it happened. Robert cleared his throat. While the girl's living situation is unfortunate, it's hardly relevant to the matter at hand. The fact remains that Thomas Mitchell, a man with billions in assets and controlling interest in one of the country's most innovative energy companies, has awakened after 4 years in a vegetative state. Coincidentally, at the same time, this homeless child entered his room unauthorized. The implication hung in the air, ugly and unspoken. You think I planned this somehow? Lily asked, genuine confusion on her face. For what? Money? It wouldn't be the first time the Mitchell name has attracted opportunists, Robert replied smoothly. I don't want your money, Lily said, rising from her chair with sudden intensity. I don't want anything from you. I came because something told me to come. I touched his hand, and he woke up. That's all I know. And now I'd like to leave. Not so fast, Emma intervened, moving to block the door. My father is asking for you specifically. He believes you did something to wake him up. As irrational as that sounds, he's insistent, and in his condition we need to keep him calm and comfortable. Dr. Coleman nodded in agreement. Thomas's recovery is extremely delicate at this stage. Any agitation could potentially cause setbacks. If seeing you provides him comfort, it would be medically advisable to allow that interaction, under supervision, of course. And in return, Emma added, her business acumen surfacing, we could offer you appropriate compensation for your time, perhaps assistance with your current situation. Lily's expression hardened. I told you I don't want your money. Everyone wants something, Robert commented dryly. A place to stay then, Emma pressed. Proper meals, new clothes, education. There must be something you need. Lily was silent for a long moment, weighing her options. The truth was, winter was coming. Boston winters were brutal on the streets. The shelters would be overcrowded, and her hideaway by the river offered little protection against the bitter cold. I'll talk to Mr. Mitchell, she finally conceded, but not because of what you're offering. Because he asked for me and because... She hesitated, then continued with quiet certainty. Because whatever connected us yesterday isn't finished yet. The adults exchanged glances, their skepticism evident, but temporarily shelved in favor of practicality. I'll arrange it, Dr. Coleman said, standing. But first, Lily, our hospital social worker should meet with you. And perhaps we could offer you a chance to shower and change? We keep spare clothes for patients and visitors who need them. For a moment, Lily's tough exterior wavered, revealing the exhausted child beneath. A hot shower was a rare luxury in her world. That would be nice, thank you. As Dr. Coleman led Lily from the conference room, Emma turned to her uncle, her voice low and tense. What do you make of this? Robert's expression was unreadable. I think we need to proceed with extreme caution. Whether this girl genuinely has some unexplainable ability or is running an elaborate con doesn't matter. What matters is protecting Thomas and Mitchell Innovations. The board meeting is in 3 days. We need to present a united front. And if Dad insists on believing this, miracle story? Then we accommodate him for now, Robert replied smoothly. The psychological impact of waking from a 4-year coma can't be underestimated. He'll need time to process reality. Emma studied her uncle's face. You don't seem particularly happy that your brother is awake. Of course I am, Robert responded, his tone perfectly modulated. It's remarkable, but I'm also practical. Thomas is hardly in a condition to resume leadership of a multi-billion-dollar company. The transition of power needs to be handled delicately. Transition of power, Emma repeated slowly. You mean back to him, right? Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes. Let's focus on his recovery first, shall we? One miracle at a time. Meanwhile, in a hospital bathroom usually reserved for staff, Lily stood under the hot shower, letting the water wash away days of grime and tension. The borrowed toiletries smelled of lavender and clean things, scents that belonged to a world she had almost forgotten. As steam filled the small space, she allowed herself a moment of vulnerability, pressing her forehead against the cool tile wall. What had she gotten herself into? The strange connection she felt to Thomas Mitchell defied explanation, yet it was as real as the water cascading over her skin. She had spent years making herself invisible, learning to survive by avoiding attention. Now she was at the center of what would undoubtedly become a media circus once word got out. After drying off, she examined the clothes Dr. Coleman had provided. A simple pair of jeans, a white t-shirt, a blue zip-up hoodie, and new sneakers that were only slightly too big. Clean and properly dressed for the first time in months, Lily barely recognized her reflection. The girl in the mirror looked younger, more vulnerable, her dark blonde hair framing a face that appeared almost delicate when not obscured by dirt. A soft knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. Lily, it's Claire Reynolds, one of Mr. Mitchell's nurses. Doctor, Coleman asked me to bring you to him when you're ready. Taking a deep breath, Lily opened the door to find a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. You look much better, Claire said, without a trace of condescension. How do you feel? Clean, Lily replied simply. It's been a while. Claire's expression softened with understanding. I worked at a youth shelter before becoming a nurse. I know how precious a hot shower can be when you're living rough. As they walked toward Thomas's room, Claire filled the silence with gentle conversation. Mr. Mitchell's been asking about you all morning. Whatever you did, it certainly made an impression. I didn't do anything, Lily said, the familiar defense rising automatically. Claire gave her a sidelong glance. Didn't you? 4 years I've been caring for that man. 4 years of unchanging vital signs, unresponsive tests, and specialists saying he'd never wake up. Then you walk in, and suddenly he's conscious and talking. She shrugged. Seems like something to me. They stopped outside Thomas's door. Through the small window, Lily could see him sitting up in bed, looking more alert than the day before. He was reading something on a tablet, his brow furrowed in concentration. He's catching up on 4 years of news, Claire explained. Not taking it slow, despite doctor's orders. She smiled fondly. Stubborn man. Is he always like that? Lily asked, curious despite herself. According to the staff who knew him before the accident, yes. Brilliant, driven, and utterly determined once he sets his mind to something. Claire paused, her expression becoming more serious. Which is why you should be prepared. He's convinced you have some kind of special ability, that you're somehow responsible for his awakening. And what do you think? Lily asked quietly. Claire considered the question carefully. I think 20 years in nursing has taught me that we understand far less about consciousness, connection, and healing than we pretend to. I think there are forces at work in this world that science hasn't categorized yet. She smiled slightly. And I think if I were in your shoes, I'd be terrified right now. Lily didn't deny it. What does he want from me? That, Claire said, pushing the door open, is something only Thomas Mitchell can answer. Thomas looked up as they entered, his intelligent eyes immediately finding Lily. For a moment, he simply studied her, as if reconciling the reality with whatever he had experienced during their first encounter. There you are, he finally said, his voice stronger than the day before. The girl with the light. Claire discreetly positioned herself by the monitors, present but giving them space. I'm Lily, she offered, standing awkwardly at the foot of the bed. Lily Walker. Lily, Thomas repeated as if testing the name. Thank you for coming back. I was afraid they might have scared you away. They tried, Lily admitted, a hint of her street-hardened directness showing through. Thomas smiled, and Lily was struck by how it transformed his face, erasing years and illness in an instant. I'm not surprised. My daughter and brother can be protective. They think I'm running some kind of scam, Lily said bluntly. And are you? Thomas asked, not unkindly. No, she replied simply. I don't even understand what happened. Thomas's expression grew more serious. Neither do I. But I know what I experienced. When you touched my hand, it was like finding a path through darkness. I saw your light and I followed it back. He paused, studying her reaction. You think that sounds crazy? No, Lily said softly. I felt it too, the connection. I saw your memories. Yes, Thomas said, his voice barely above a whisper. That's it, exactly. A connection. He leaned forward, wincing slightly at the movement. Lily, I need to understand what happened, and I think you do too. Will you help me figure this out? Before Lily could respond, the door opened, and Emma entered with Dr. Coleman and Robert following close behind. Their conversation ceased abruptly as they took in the scene before them. Dad, you should be resting, Emma said, concern evident beneath her controlled exterior. Dr. Coleman said not to overexert yourself. I'm having a conversation, Emma, not running a marathon, Thomas replied, a hint of the powerful businessman he had once been emerging in his tone. He turned back to Lily. We'll continue this later, but please don't disappear again. Lily nodded, suddenly aware of the weight of expectation from everyone in the room. Whatever inexplicable thing had drawn her to Thomas Mitchell, it had now entangled her completely in his world. For better or worse, her days of invisibility were over. Chapter 4. Bonds formed and tested. The Mitchell estate in Brookline stood like a monument to old Boston money, though Thomas had purchased it only after his technology innovations made him a billionaire. The sprawling colonial revival mansion, set back from the road behind wrought iron gates, occupied nearly 2 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds. For Lily Walker, who had spent the last 3 years making homes out of forgotten spaces, it might as well have been another planet. This is where I'll be staying, she asked, staring wide-eyed through the car window as Emma's driver punched in the security code. For now, Emma replied from the front passenger seat, her tone carefully neutral. The guest house, specifically. It has its own entrance and facilities, but it's close enough to the main house that staff can assist you if needed. The arrangement had been negotiated over the previous 2 days, with Thomas insisting from his hospital bed that Lily be given proper accommodations. Emma had eventually relented, though her reluctance was obvious. Robert had recused himself from the discussion entirely, citing pressing business matters at Mitchell Innovations. As the car wound up the curved driveway, Lily caught her first glimpse of the guest house, a charming 2-story structure that most people would consider a generous family home in its own right. Mrs. Abernathy manages the household, Emma explained as they parked. She'll show you around and explain how things work. There's a kitchen stocked with basics, but you can join us for meals in the main house if you prefer. She hesitated, then added, Dad will be discharged tomorrow if his condition remains stable. He's quite eager to continue your conversations. Lily nodded, unsure how to respond. The surreal quality of her situation hadn't diminished. Just days ago, she had been scrounging for food in restaurant dumpsters. Now she was being driven to a mansion by the daughter of one of the richest men in Massachusetts. This is very nice of you, Lily said awkwardly as they walked toward the guest house. Letting me stay here, Emma gave her a measured look. Let me be clear, Lily. This is happening because my father believes you somehow helped him. I don't understand what occurred in that hospital room, and frankly, I'm not sure I want to. But his recovery is my priority, and if having you nearby contributes to that, then I'm willing to accommodate it. She paused at the guest house door. That said, I hope you understand this is temporary. Once Dad is fully recovered, I'll go back to where I came from. Lily finished for her, a hint of resignation in her voice. Don't worry, I get it. I'm not looking to move in permanently. Something in Lily's directness seemed to catch Emma off guard. For a brief moment, her carefully constructed professional facade slipped, revealing a glimpse of genuine curiosity. What exactly are you looking for, Lily? Because everyone wants something. Lily considered the question, her young face serious beyond her years. I want to understand what happened, why I was drawn to your father, and why I could help him when no one else could. She met Emma's gaze directly. And I'd like a winter coat before I go back to the streets. A good one. The unexpected honesty startled a small, surprised laugh from Emma. I think we can manage a coat. Mrs. Abernathy, a stern-faced woman in her 60s whose expression softened considerably upon meeting Lily, showed her around the guest house. The space was elegantly furnished but comfortable. A living room with plush sofas facing a fireplace, a small but fully equipped kitchen, and upstairs, a bedroom suite that made Lily's eyes widen. The bathroom has heated floors, Mrs. Abernathy explained, demonstrating the controls. And there's a selection of toiletries in the cabinet, Mr. Mitchell was very specific about making sure you had everything you might need. It's a lot, Lily said, overwhelmed by the luxury. Mrs. Abernathy studied her with knowing eyes. Too much? Lily nodded, embarrassed. I'm used to less. The older woman's expression softened further. Then we'll simplify. Let me know what makes you comfortable, and I'll adjust accordingly. She hesitated, then added with surprising directness, the staff has been told you're a distant family connection who's fallen on hard times. No one needs to know more than that, unless you choose to share. Thank you, Lily said, genuinely touched by the woman's sensitivity. Dinner is at 7 in the main house, but I can bring something here if you prefer. Miss Emma mentioned you might like some time to settle in. After Mrs. Abernathy left, Lily stood in the middle of the bedroom, feeling strangely untethered. The silence was absolute. No traffic noise, no shouting pedestrians, none of the constant urban soundtrack that had been the background to her existence for years. She ran her hand over the pristine white comforter on the bed, almost afraid to sit on it. This wasn't her world. Yet here she was, pulled into it by forces she couldn't begin to comprehend. Moving to the window, she looked out over the manicured gardens, now tinged with autumn colors. Beyond the property's edge, she could see the distant Boston skyline. Somewhere out there was her boathouse, her sleeping bag, her precarious but familiar life. She wondered if she would ever see it again, or if this strange new chapter would rewrite her story completely. The following day, Thomas Mitchell came home. His arrival caused a flurry of activity throughout the estate, medical equipment being installed in his bedroom, a private nurse setting up a station, staff members rushing to ensure everything was perfect. Lily watched the procession from her guesthouse window, feeling strangely reluctant to join the welcoming committee that had formed on the main house steps. It was Emma who eventually came to find her, knocking briskly on the guesthouse door. "Dad's asking for you," she said without preamble. "He's settled in his study. The doctors want him to rest, but he's insisting on—" She made air quotes with her fingers, "catching up on what I've missed." Lily followed Emma across the grounds and into the main house, where the grandeur made the guest house look positively modest by comparison. The study was located at the back of the house, a warm wood-paneled room lined with bookshelves and dominated by a massive desk overlooking the gardens. Thomas sat in a leather armchair by the fireplace rather than behind the desk, a tablet in his lap and papers scattered on a side table. Though still pale and noticeably thinner than he must have been before his accident, he looked more like himself, freshly shaved, dressed in casual but expensive-looking clothes, his silver-streaked dark hair neatly combed. "Lily," he said, his face lighting up when she entered. "Come in, please." He gestured to the chair opposite his. "Emma, could you give us some time?" Emma hesitated, clearly reluctant to leave them alone. "I'm not going to collapse, and I doubt Lily is planning to rob me," Thomas said dryly. "We'll be fine for half an hour." With obvious reluctance, Emma withdrew, closing the door behind her, but not before giving Lily a pointed look that clearly communicated a warning. "You'll have to forgive my daughter," Thomas said once they were alone. "She's become quite protective during my absence." "She loves you," Lily said simply, perching on the edge of the offered chair. "She's afraid of losing you again." Thomas studied her with interest. "You're very perceptive for someone so young," Lily shrugged. "When you live on the streets, you learn to read people quickly. It's a survival skill." "Yes, I suppose it would be." Thomas set aside his tablet. "I want to thank you, Lily, not just for what happened at the hospital, but for agreeing to stay here. I know this must be incredibly strange for you." "It's definitely not what I'm used to," Lily admitted, glancing around at the opulent surroundings. "But it beats the boathouse in winter. Is that where you were living, by the river?" When Lily nodded, Thomas continued, "How long have you been on your own?" "Almost 3 years," Lily said, her voice matter-of-fact. "Since I was 12. "And before that?" "Foster care, 6 different homes in 2 years." Her tone made it clear this wasn't a subject she wished to elaborate on. Thomas seemed to understand. "I won't press for details, but I hope you know that you're safe here, Lily. Whatever happens next, I want to make sure you're taken care of." "Because I woke you up," Lily stated, not a question. "Because you're a child who deserves better than sleeping in a boathouse," Thomas corrected gently. "The other matter, what happened between us, that's something separate we need to understand." Lily's posture relaxed slightly, relieved that he wasn't immediately delving into the inexplicable connection they had shared. "Your family thinks I'm running a con," she said, deciding directness was the best approach, or that I'm delusional, or both. Thomas smiled, the expression transforming his face. My family is struggling to make sense of something that defies conventional explanation, as am I, to be honest. But I know what I experienced, Lily. I was somewhere else. Not here. Not conscious. But not gone either. I could sometimes sense things happening around me, but distantly, like echoes. And then you came and everything changed. I felt it too, Lily said quietly. When I touched your hand, it was like connecting to something bigger than both of us. Yes, Thomas said, leaning forward with intensity. Exactly. But how? And why you? Why me? He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of familiar frustration. I've spent my entire career pursuing scientific innovation, believing in what can be proven and replicated. This challenges everything I thought I understood about consciousness. Maybe there are things science can't explain yet, Lily suggested. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. Maybe so. In any case, I intend to find out. His expression became more focused. I'd like to try an experiment if you're willing. I want to see if we can recreate that connection, or at least better understand what happened. Before Lily could respond, the study door opened and Robert Mitchell entered without knocking, a tablet in hand and a concerned expression on his face. Thomas, we need to talk about... He stopped short upon seeing Lily. Ah, I didn't realize you had company. Robert, Thomas acknowledged, a slight edge to his voice. I believe I mentioned I'd be speaking with Lily this afternoon. So you did. My apologies for interrupting. Robert's smile didn't reach his eyes as he turned to Lily. How are you finding your accommodations, Miss Walker? Comfortable, I hope. It's very nice, Lily replied neutrally, instantly on guard. Something about Robert Mitchell made her deeply uneasy, though she couldn't quite articulate why. Wonderful. Perhaps you could give my brother and me a few minutes? There's a business matter that requires his immediate attention. Though phrased as a request, Robert's tone made it clear he was not asking. Lily looked to Thomas, who nodded reluctantly. We'll continue our conversation later, he promised. Perhaps at dinner. As Lily left the study, she couldn't help overhearing the beginning of what was clearly going to be a tense discussion. The board is demanding answers, Thomas, Robert was saying, his voice low but urgent. News of your recovery has leaked to the press, and the stock is fluctuating wildly. We need to issue a statement immediately. And we will, Thomas replied calmly. Once I've had a chance to review... Review? Robert interrupted. Thomas, you've been unconscious for 4 years. The company has evolved, the market has changed. You can't possibly expect to step back in as if... The door closed behind Lily, cutting off the rest of Robert's sentence. She stood in the hallway for a moment, absorbing what she had overheard. Clearly, Thomas's miraculous awakening had implications far beyond the personal and medical. There were business considerations, financial stakes, power dynamics at play. As she turned to head back to the guest house, she nearly collided with Emma, who was coming down the hall with Claire, the nurse from the hospital who had apparently been hired to oversee Thomas's home care. Oh, Lily, Emma said, sounding surprised. I thought you'd still be with Dad. Your uncle needed to talk to him, Lily explained. Business stuff. Emma and Claire exchanged a look that Lily couldn't quite interpret. Is everything okay? Lily asked, her sensitivity to undercurrents of tension kicking in, another survival skill from the streets. Of course, Emma replied, too quickly. Claire just needs to check Dad's vitals and give him his medication. Claire's expression was more candid. We're a bit concerned about your father pushing himself too hard too soon, she told Lily. He's making remarkable progress, but he's still recovering from significant neurological trauma and muscle atrophy. He needs rest, not business meetings and investigations into unusual phenomena. The last phrase was spoken without judgment, but Lily understood the implication. Her presence was potentially disruptive to Thomas's recovery. I'm not trying to upset him, Lily said defensively. He's the one who wants to talk about what happened. No one's blaming you, Claire assured her, but perhaps we could all agree that Thomas's physical recovery should be the priority right now. The other matters can wait until he's stronger. Lily nodded reluctantly. I guess that makes sense. Thank you for understanding, Emma said, her relief evident. Dad tends to throw himself completely into whatever catches his interest. Right now, that seems to be you and whatever happened at the hospital. But he needs to focus on getting well first. As Claire continued toward the study, Emma hesitated, then turned back to Lily. Would you like a tour of the grounds? It might be nice to get some fresh air. The unexpected offer caught Lily off guard. I'm sure that would be nice. As they walked through the expansive gardens, Emma maintained a polite but distant conversation, pointing out features of the property and sharing bits of its history. It was only when they reached a secluded stone bench overlooking a small pond that her carefully constructed facade began to slip. "I didn't want to believe it," she said abruptly, breaking a comfortable silence. "What you and my father described. It seemed impossible." Lily waited, sensing Emma needed to say more. "But then I reviewed the security footage from the hospital room," Emma continued. "The moment you touched his hand, every monitor spiked simultaneously. His brain waves changed pattern completely. And then, 3 minutes later, he opened his eyes." She turned to look directly at Lily. "After 4 years of nothing, no response, no hope. 3 minutes after you walked into his room." "I can't explain it," Lily said honestly. "I wish I could." "Dr. Coleman can't explain it either," Emma admitted. "She's ordered a full review of all his medical data, comparing before and after. She's talking about writing a paper, though without using your name, of course." She paused, struggling visibly with her next words. "I've spent 4 years preparing myself for the possibility that my father would never wake up. I took over running his company, managing his foundation, making decisions I never thought I'd have to make. And then you appeared. And suddenly, he's back." Her voice caught slightly. "How do I even begin to process that?" For the first time, Lily saw beyond Emma's controlled exterior to the exhausted, overwhelmed young woman beneath. Someone who had been carrying an impossible burden, suddenly faced with a miracle she couldn't comprehend. "I think," Lily said carefully, "that you don't have to understand something to be grateful for it." Emma looked startled, then thoughtful. "That's surprisingly wise," Lily shrugged. "When you're homeless, weird stuff happens all the time that you can't explain. You learn to just accept the good things when they come, without questioning them too much." A small, genuine smile crossed Emma's face, the first Lily had seen. "Is that what you're doing here? Accepting a good thing without questioning it?" "No," Lily replied honestly. "I definitely have questions, but I'm not going to refuse a real bed and hot showers while I look for answers." Emma laughed, the sound surprisingly youthful and unguarded. "Fair enough." She stood, composure returning but somehow less rigid than before. "We should head back. Dinner will be served soon and Dad insisted you join us." As they walked back toward the house, Emma added casually, "By the way, I had some clothes delivered to your room. Nothing fancy, just basics. Mrs. Abernathy should have put them away by now." "You didn't have to," Lily began. "I know," Emma interrupted, "but winter's coming. And you mentioned wanting a coat." Back at the guest house, Lily found not just a coat but an entire wardrobe: jeans, sweaters, t-shirts, pajamas, even a dress for more formal occasions. All in her size, all simple but good quality. And hanging in the closet was a down-filled winter parka, exactly the kind she had coveted whenever the temperature dropped and the wind cut through her inadequate layers. As she ran her hand over the coat's soft, warm fabric, Lily felt tears prick unexpectedly at her eyes. It wasn't the material items themselves that moved her, but what they represented. Someone acknowledging her basic needs and addressing them without fanfare. How long had it been since anyone had done that for her? That evening, sitting at the Mitchell family dining table, Robert noticeably absent, Lily caught Emma watching her with an expression that had softened considerably since their first meeting. And when Thomas spoke of continuing their investigation into their mysterious connection, Emma didn't object. "We'll take it slow," she said instead. "One step at a time." For Lily, who had spent years taking each day as it came, never daring to plan beyond the next meal or the next safe place to sleep, this cautious acceptance felt like the first fragile bridge between her world and theirs. Whether it would hold the weight of what was to come remained to be seen. Chapter 5. Revelations. "Let's try again," Thomas said, his voice calm but tinged with frustration. "Just like before. Focus on the connection we felt at the hospital." Lily nodded, extending her hand across the desk in Thomas's study. They sat facing each other in the late afternoon light, engaging in what had become a daily ritual over the past week. Each session followed the same pattern. They would join hands, close their eyes, and attempt to recreate the mysterious connection that had awakened Thomas from his coma. Thus far, their efforts had yielded nothing beyond ordinary human contact. As their hands touched, Lily concentrated, trying to recapture the sensation she had experienced in the hospital room. But there was no flash of insight, no transfer of memories, no ethereal connection. just the warm grip of Thomas's hand, growing stronger each day as his physical therapy progressed. After several minutes, Thomas sighed and released her hand. Nothing, nothing, Lily confirmed, leaning back in her chair. Maybe it was a one-time thing. Maybe it only works in hospitals. Or maybe we're approaching this all wrong, Thomas mused, running a hand through his silver-streaked hair. We're trying to force something that happened spontaneously. Perhaps that's the problem. Outside the study windows, the Boston autumn was in full glory, painting the estate's grounds in fiery oranges and deep reds. In the week since Thomas had returned home, Lily had grown more comfortable in the Mitchell household, though she still felt like an anomaly, neither family nor staff, existing in a nebulous, in-between space that defied categorization. Emma had warmed considerably toward her, especially after several of Thomas's doctors had confirmed that his recovery was progressing at an unprecedented rate. Robert remained coolly polite but distant, his visits to the main house brief and typically focused on business matters that excluded Lily entirely. "I've been thinking," Thomas said, interrupting Lily's thoughts, "about what triggered the connection in the first place. You mentioned following an intuition, feeling drawn to the hospital specifically on that day." Lily nodded. "The sky looked different, pink, almost glowing, and I just knew I needed to be there. Have you had experiences like that before? Being drawn to specific places or people?" Lily considered the question, casting back through memories she typically avoided. "A few times," she admitted. "It's like a pull. Like something's calling me somewhere specific and I can't ignore it." She hesitated, then added, "It's how I found my dog Joey and how I discovered the boathouse where I was living. And both those instances led to something positive," Thomas observed. "Shelter, companionship. Until animal control took Joey away," Lily said, a shadow crossing her face. "But yeah, I guess so." Thomas leaned forward, his expression intensifying. "What if it's not something we can force, Lily? What if it's a gift that activates when needed, when someone needs healing?" Lily shifted uncomfortably. "I'm not a healer. I don't know anything about medicine." "Perhaps not in the conventional sense," Thomas acknowledged. "But healing comes in many forms. Sometimes what the body needs most is for the spirit to wake up." His eyes took on a distant look. "I remember darkness, endless darkness, and then light, your light." Before Lily could respond, the study door opened, and Claire entered with Thomas's afternoon medication and a gentle reminder that he had physical therapy in 30 minutes. "How are our experiments going?" she asked, her tone friendly but professional as she checked Thomas's pulse. "Inconclusive," Thomas replied with a slight smile, "but fascinating nonetheless." Claire turned to Lily. "Emma was looking for you earlier. Something about discussing school options." Lily made a face. "Right, that." Thomas laughed at her expression. "Education is important, Lily. Even reluctant 15-year-olds need to attend school." "I've been out for 3 years," Lily protested. "I'd be so behind." "All the more reason to start catching up," Thomas replied firmly. "Emma has researched several options that might work for your unique situation." Recognizing a losing battle, Lily excused herself and went in search of Emma, whom she found in the garden pavilion with a laptop and several brochures spread before her. "Ah, there you are," Emma said, gesturing to the seat opposite her. "I've been looking at alternative programs that might suit you better than traditional high school." "I'm not sure any school is going to work for me," Lily said, reluctantly sitting down. "I don't exactly have records or transcripts or whatever they need." "Actually, that's not entirely true," Emma replied, sliding a folder across the table. "The social worker at Mass General helped us locate your last school records. You were quite a good student before. Everything happened." Lily stared at the folder, unsettled by this tangible piece of her past life. "You've been investigating me?" "Not investigating," Emma corrected gently. "Trying to help. There's a difference." She tapped one of the brochures. "The Commonwealth School has an excellent program for students who need flexible arrangements. They're willing to assess you individually to determine placement, rather than going strictly by age or previous education." "Private schools cost money," Lily pointed out. "A lot of money." "Dad wants to cover it," Emma said simply. "Consider it compensation for your consultations." Lily frowned. "I'm not consulting. We're just trying to figure out what happened." "Nevertheless," Emma continued smoothly, "your presence here has been invaluable to his recovery. The doctors say his progress is remarkable, Whether it's the continued connection you share or simply the motivation your presence provides, the result is the same. He's getting better, faster than anyone predicted. Before Lily could formulate a response, Mrs. Abernathy appeared at the pavilion entrance. "Miss Emma, there's a situation requiring your attention at the main house. Mr. Robert has arrived with several board members. They're insisting on speaking with Mr. Thomas." Emma's expression hardened. "Dad's not scheduled for any meetings today. He has physical therapy in 20 minutes. I informed them of that, miss. They said it couldn't wait." Emma stood, quickly gathering her materials. "Tell Claire to delay the therapy if necessary. I'll handle this." She turned to Lily. "We'll continue our discussion later. In the meantime, perhaps you could stay in the guest house until our visitors leave." The request was politely phrased, but clearly non-negotiable. Lily nodded, understanding that her presence would only complicate whatever corporate drama was unfolding. As Emma strode purposefully toward the main house, Lily headed in the opposite direction, toward the guest house that had become her temporary home. However, instead of going inside, she found herself drawn to a path that wound through a wooded section of the property. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, creating a dappled pattern on the ground that seemed to shift and change with each step she took. Without consciously deciding to, Lily followed the path deeper into the woods. After several minutes of walking, she emerged into a small clearing dominated by an ancient oak tree. Beneath its spreading branches stood a simple stone bench, weathered by years of exposure, but still sturdy. Something about the space felt significant, sacred, almost. As Lily approached the bench, she noticed small objects arranged along its edge. A collection of smooth stones, a bird feather, a child's drawing protected in a weatherproof holder. With a start, she realized she was looking at a memorial of some kind. "It's for Thomas's wife, Catherine." Lily whirled around to find Robert Mitchell standing at the edge of the clearing, his expression unreadable. "I didn't mean to intrude," she said quickly. "I was just walking and found this place." "Interesting that you should find it," Robert replied, his tone neutral but his eyes calculating. "It's quite hidden. Most people don't know it exists." "I'll go," Lily offered, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. "No need," Robert said, approaching the bench. "I come here sometimes myself when I need perspective." He gestured to the small collection of mementos. "Emma was 8 when Catherine left. She used to leave things here, tokens to remember her mother by. Thomas built this place for her." "Left?" Lily asked, confusion evident in her voice. I assumed Mrs. Mitchell had died," Robert supplied. "No. Though sometimes I think that might have been easier for them both. She abandoned them. Decided family life wasn't for her after all. Last I heard, she was living in Paris with husband number 3. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable, revealing more emotion than Lily had previously witnessed from him. "That must have been hard," Lily said quietly. "For both of them." Robert studied her for a moment. "It was." Thomas threw himself into his work. Emma grew up too fast. He touched one of the stones gently. This clearing was the only place Thomas would allow himself to acknowledge the pain. He never spoke of Catherine anywhere else, never allowed her name to be mentioned in the house. "Why are you telling me this?" Lily asked. "Because you've inserted yourself into my family's life, Miss Walker," Robert replied, his voice hardening slightly. "And while Thomas and Emma may be captivated by your mysterious abilities, I prefer to understand what I'm dealing with." "I didn't insert myself anywhere," Lily defended. "I don't even understand why I was drawn to the hospital that day." "Perhaps not consciously," Robert conceded. "But the result is the same. In 1 week you've gone from a homeless street child to living in my brother's guest house, wearing clothes his daughter purchased, and about to attend a prestigious private school at his expense." His eyes narrowed slightly. "You can understand my concern." Lily felt a flush of anger rise in her cheeks. "I haven't asked for any of this. I told Emma I don't need school or new clothes. I don't want your family's money." "Everyone wants something, Miss Walker," Robert said, echoing his earlier sentiment. "The question is, what do you want? That money can't buy." Before Lily could respond, the sound of raised voices carried through the trees from the direction of the main house. Robert straightened, his attention diverted. "That would be the board meeting getting heated," he remarked. Thomas was never one to ease back into things gradually. "What's happening?" Lily asked, momentarily forgetting their tense exchange. Robert hesitated, then seemed to decide that sharing the information would do no harm. My brother believes he's ready to resume his role as CEO of Mitchell Innovations. The board, and I, disagree. His recovery, while remarkable, is still in its early stages. The company has evolved in his absence, made new commitments, taken new directions. And you've been in charge, Lily observed. Acting CEO, yes, Robert confirmed. With Emma being groomed to eventually take the reins, we've maintained stability during an extremely difficult period. The shareholders have been rewarded for their patience. His expression darkened slightly. And now Thomas wants to walk back in, as if the last 4 years never happened. The genuine concern in his voice gave Lily pause. Perhaps Robert's apparent coldness toward her wasn't solely about suspicion. Perhaps it was also about protecting the company and family he'd steered through crisis. He just wants his life back, Lily said softly. Everything was taken from him in an instant. Can you blame him for wanting to reclaim it? Something in her words seemed to strike a chord with Robert. His expression softened fractionally. No, I suppose I can't. But wanting doesn't make it possible. The Thomas who ran Mitchell Innovations was at the peak of his abilities, mentally sharp, physically strong, commanding respect through sheer force of personality. That Thomas may never fully return. The uncomfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sound of a car engine starting. It seems the board members are leaving, Robert observed. I should go see what damage has been done. He turned to go, then paused. Miss Walker, whatever your intentions, good, bad, or simply confused, I hope you understand the impact of your presence here. Thomas believes in you. He believes you have some special connection, some healing power. If you're sincere, then help him accept his limitations. If you're not, he left the threat unspoken but clear. As Robert walked away, Lily remained by the memorial bench, troubled by the conversation. She had never claimed to have healing powers or special abilities, yet somehow she had become central to Thomas Mitchell's recovery narrative, a responsibility she hadn't asked for and wasn't sure she could fulfill. Slowly she made her way back to the guest house, her mind churning with questions. If she couldn't recreate the connection she'd shared with Thomas at the hospital, what purpose did her continued presence serve? Was she merely a placebo, useful only because Thomas believed in her ability to help him? As she approached the guest house, she noticed Claire leaving the main house, medical bag in hand. The nurse looked troubled, her normally calm demeanor disrupted. "Claire?" Lily called. "Is everything okay?" Claire hesitated, clearly weighing professional discretion against her obvious concern. "Thomas pushed himself too hard with the board members," she finally said. His blood pressure spiked dangerously. "I had to administer sedatives to prevent a potential stroke." Alarm surged through Lily. "Is he going to be all right?" "He needs rest," Claire replied firmly. "Complete rest. Emma is with him now." She gave Lily a pointed look. "No visitors, no experiments, no excitement of any kind for at least 48 hours. Lily nodded, understanding the implicit instruction. "I'll stay away." "Thank you." Claire's expression softened slightly. "I know you care about him, Lily, we all do. But his recovery isn't just about waking up. It's about rebuilding strength gradually, allowing his brain and body time to heal." As Claire left, Lily entered the guest house, suddenly feeling the weight of everything that had happened over the past week. The quiet luxury of her temporary home felt oppressive rather than comforting. She moved restlessly through the rooms, finally settling on the window seat that overlooked the main house. Lights burned in Thomas's bedroom wing, shadows moving behind the curtains, Emma and medical personnel presumably. In another wing she could see Robert's silhouette pacing in what appeared to be a home office. The Mitchells were a family in crisis, she realized. Thomas's awakening should have been purely joyous, but instead it had disrupted a painful equilibrium they had established in his absence. Emma had built her adult identity around preserving her father's legacy. Robert had assumed power and responsibility. The company had evolved, and now Thomas wanted everything back as it was, as if time could simply be rewound. And somehow Lily had become entangled in all of it, a catalyst for change, yet unable to control the direction that change took. As night fell, she remained at the window, watching as the lights in the main house gradually went out. Only Thomas's room remained illuminated, a silent reminder of the vulnerable man at the center of the storm. Just as Lily was about to turn away, something caught her attention, a subtle shift in the quality of light outside. The clear autumn night sky seemed to shimmer, taking on a faint pinkish glow similar to what she had seen the morning she was drawn to the hospital. Her heartbeat quickened. The sensation was returning. That inexplicable certainty. That pull towards something important. But this time, it wasn't directing her to go somewhere new. It was focusing her attention on what was already before her. Thomas Mitchell's illuminated window. Without consciously deciding to move, Lily found herself outside, barefoot on the cool grass, walking steadily toward the main house. No security system challenged her. No alarm sounded as she entered through a side door that should have been locked, but opened at her touch. The house was quiet, the staff either asleep or gone for the night. She moved through the darkened hallways with uncanny confidence, as if guided by an internal map. When she reached Thomas's bedroom door, she paused only briefly before turning the handle and entering. The room was dimly lit by a single lamp. Thomas lay in the large bed, medical equipment arranged discreetly nearby, monitoring his condition even in sleep. Emma had fallen asleep in an armchair beside him, her face finally unguarded in repose, looking much younger than her 28 years. Lily approached the bed silently, drawn by the same compelling force that had led her to the hospital a week earlier. Thomas's face was pale, lines of strain evident even in sedated sleep. Without hesitation, she reached out and placed her hand gently over his. The connection was immediate and powerful. Not a gentle link, but a surging current of energy that made her gasp audibly. Images flooded her mind, more vivid and numerous than before. Thomas as a young man starting his first company in a garage. Thomas holding infant Emma in the hospital, tears streaming down his face. Thomas and Robert as boys, building a treehouse with their father. Thomas standing on a beach, watching a woman walk away as Emma sobbed in his arms. Thomas sitting alone in his study, staring at a family photograph with unspeakable grief in his eyes. But these weren't just disconnected scenes from the past. They were accompanied by emotions, by context, by understanding. Lily felt Thomas's determination as he built his company, his joy when Emma was born, his devastation when Catherine abandoned them, his guilt over immersing himself in work rather than healing. And then, strangely, she felt him becoming aware of her presence, not physically in the room, but in this shared mental space where past and present seemed to coexist. Thomas? She thought, unsure if communication was possible in this strange connection. Lily. His consciousness responded clear and strong. You found me again. I don't understand what's happening, she admitted. Neither do I. But I know it's important. I know you're here to help me see something I've been missing. The mental landscape shifted, and suddenly they were standing together in the memorial clearing, the stone bench before them gleaming in ethereal light. Why here? Lily wondered. Because this is where I buried my heart when Catherine left, Thomas replied. Where I locked away my pain instead of healing it, where I chose work over vulnerability, achievement over connection. Understanding dawned on Lily with crystal clarity. This wasn't about waking from a physical coma. It was about awakening from an emotional one that had begun long before the car accident. You need to let go, she told him gently, not of the past, but of the way you've been carrying it. In the strange shared consciousness, she felt his resistance, then gradual acceptance. She felt years of suppressed grief rising to the surface, felt him finally acknowledging the damage done when he refused to process his pain. Yes, his consciousness whispered. It's time. In the physical world, Emma stirred in her chair, awakened by some subtle change in the room's atmosphere. Her eyes widened as she saw Lily standing by her father's bed, their hands joined, both of them with tears streaming down their faces, though Thomas remained asleep. What are you doing? Emma whispered, rising slowly from her chair. You're not supposed to be here. Lily couldn't answer. She was too deeply immersed in the connection, in the profound healing that was occurring not in Thomas's body, but in his spirit. As Emma watched, the medical monitors began to change, not in the dangerous spikes of earlier, but in the smooth, steady patterns of deep, restorative sleep. Thomas's breathing deepened, the tension visibly leaving his body even as tears continued to flow from beneath his closed eyelids. What's happening? Emma asked, her voice hushed with wonder rather than alarm. He's letting go, Lily whispered, the words coming from somewhere beyond conscious thought. He's finally grieving what was lost, so he can embrace what remains. Emma sank back into her chair, watching in silence as the strange communion continued. Whatever skepticism she might have harbored about Lily's influence had no defense against the tangible transformation occurring before her eyes. Outside the window, the pink glow in the sky intensified briefly, then gradually faded back to the normal darkness of night. As it disappeared, Lily felt the powerful connection begin to ebb, returning her slowly to ordinary awareness. She gently withdrew her hand from Thomas's, feeling drained but strangely peaceful. "Will he be okay?" Emma asked quietly. Lily nodded, suddenly exhausted. I think he'll be better than okay. He needed to heal something deeper than his body." She swayed slightly, the room tilting around her. Emma was at her side instantly, supporting her with surprising strength. "Come on," she said gently. "Let's get you back to the guest house before you collapse." As they walked slowly through the darkened house, Emma kept a steadying arm around Lily's shoulders. Neither spoke until they reached the guest house door. "I've seen a lot of inexplicable things in the business world," Emma said finally, her voice thoughtful. "Impossible deals that somehow come together, disastrous launches that unexpectedly succeed, competitors who suddenly self-destruct. I've learned that sometimes you don't need to understand why something works to appreciate that it does." She met Lily's eyes directly. "I don't know what gift you have or how it connects you to my father, but I know it's real, and I'm grateful." Too tired for words, Lily simply nodded. As she collapsed onto her bed minutes later, she realized that something fundamental had shifted, not just for Thomas, but for all of them. The connection she shared with him wasn't about miraculous healing or mysterious powers. It was about being seen, about truth, about bringing light to places long kept in darkness. And perhaps most significantly, it wasn't finished yet. Chapter 6. The Truth Beneath. The change in Thomas Mitchell was evident to everyone the following morning. He awoke early, clear-eyed and focused in a way he hadn't been since his awakening. The medical team was astonished by his improved vital signs. Claire, running through her standard checks, couldn't hide her professional amazement. "Your recovery is unprecedented," she told Thomas as she recorded his blood pressure. "After yesterday's episode, we expected setbacks, not improvements." Thomas smiled, catching Lily's eye across the room where she sat quietly in a corner armchair. Emma had brought her to his room at his insistence, overriding Claire's concerns about too much excitement. "Sometimes the body knows what it needs better than medicine does," Thomas replied, "and sometimes healing comes from unexpected sources." Robert arrived mid-morning, tablet in hand, prepared to discuss damage control strategies after the contentious board meeting. He stopped short in the doorway, taking in the scene. Thomas, sitting up in bed, reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed company documents. Emma relaxed in a chair nearby, and Lily, sketching quietly in a notebook Emma had given her. "You look remarkably well," Robert observed, his tone a mixture of surprise and wariness. "Claire mentioned your vitals have stabilized?" "Better than stable," Thomas replied, setting aside his papers. "I feel more like myself than I have since waking up. Clear-headed, focused." He gestured to the documents. "I've been reviewing the quarterly reports. Impressive work, Robert. You've maintained solid growth despite challenging market conditions." The unexpected praise caught Robert off guard. "Thank you," he said cautiously, "though I can't take all the credit. Emma has been instrumental in steering our renewable energy division." "So I see." Thomas nodded toward his daughter with unmistakable pride. The Mitchell-Palmer partnership was a particularly shrewd move, opening Asian markets while maintaining technological control. He smiled at Emma. "That has your fingerprints all over it." Emma tried to hide her pleasure at her father's recognition, but a faint blush colored her cheeks. "It was a team effort. Uncle Robert approved the strategy." "After you developed it," Robert acknowledged, his usual reserve warming slightly. He turned back to Thomas. "I expected you to be less receptive this morning, considering yesterday's confrontation with the board." Thomas's expression grew thoughtful. "Yesterday I was fighting to reclaim the past, Robert. I wanted everything back exactly as it was before the accident." He glanced briefly at Lily. "I've since gained some perspective." Something in his tone made Robert look more closely at his brother. "You seem different today." "I feel different," Thomas confirmed. "More whole." He gestured to the chair beside his bed. "Sit down, Robert. I think it's time we had an honest conversation about the future of Mitchell Innovations." As the brothers began to discuss business strategy, Emma motioned for Lily to follow her from the room. They walked in comfortable silence to the kitchen, where Mrs. Abernathy was preparing lunch. "Dad seems transformed," Emma commented as they sat at the breakfast counter. "Claire says his neurological readings are better than they've been since the accident." She gave Lily a searching look. "What happened last night? What did you do?" Lily traced patterns on the granite countertop, trying to find words for something so profoundly wordless. We connected again, like at the hospital, but deeper. I saw his memories, felt his emotions. She looked up, meeting Emma's gaze. He's been carrying so much pain for so long, Emma. Not just from the accident, but from before. Your mom leaving, throwing himself into work instead of dealing with the grief. Emma's expression tightened. He never talked about Mom. Not after she left. It was like she ceased to exist. But the pain didn't, Lily said gently. He just buried it. Last night he finally allowed himself to feel it, to acknowledge it. She hesitated, then added, he needed to grieve properly before he could truly heal. Emma was silent for a long moment, absorbing this. And somehow you facilitated that? This connection between you let him process years of buried trauma in a single night. I don't know how it works, Lily admitted. I just know that it does. Mrs. Abernathy placed 2 mugs of hot chocolate before them. Her usually stern expression softened with maternal concern. You both look like you could use this, she said, before discreetly withdrawing to give them privacy. Emma wrapped her hands around the warm mug, her professional facade momentarily set aside. When I was little, before Mom left, Dad used to make hot chocolate on Sunday mornings. We'd sit in the sunroom, and he'd read to me while Mom worked in her studio. A wistful smile touched her lips. After she left, the hot chocolate stopped, the reading stopped. Dad was still there physically, but part of him just disappeared. He protected himself the only way he knew how, Lily observed. By shutting down, Emma agreed. By becoming all about work, achievement, expansion. She took a sip of her hot chocolate. I followed his example. Buried myself in business school, improving myself at the company. I never processed her abandonment either. The admission hung between them, a vulnerability Emma had likely never voiced aloud before. Maybe you should talk to him about it, Lily suggested. Now that he's ready to face those memories. Emma looked uncertain. It's been so long, I wouldn't know where to begin. Begin with how you feel, Lily said simply. That's usually a good place to start. A small smile touched Emma's lips. You're surprisingly wise for a street kid, you know that? Not wise, Lily corrected. Just experienced. When you have nothing, feelings are sometimes all you've got. You learn to understand them. Emma studied her thoughtfully. You never talk about your life before. How you ended up on the streets. Not much to tell, Lily said, the familiar defensive wall rising. Bad foster placements, system failures, the usual sad story. I doubt anything about your story is usual, Emma replied gently. Before Lily could respond, Claire appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression troubled. Emma, there's a situation. Your father is insisting on going to the office today. Robert is encouraging it, but from a medical standpoint it's absolutely out of the question. Emma set down her mug with a sigh. I'll talk to them. I'll come too, Lily offered, following Emma back to Thomas's room. They found the brothers in the midst of what appeared to be a lively debate, with Robert gesturing emphatically at something on his tablet, while Thomas shook his head. The Palmer acquisition needs to happen now, not 6 months from now, Robert was saying. The market won't wait, and neither will our competitors. The terms are unfavorable, Thomas countered. Palmer knows we want his lithium processing technology, so he's inflating the valuation. We need to renegotiate from a position of strength. Which is precisely why you need to make an appearance at headquarters, Robert pressed. Your return will stabilize investor confidence, silence the rumors, and give us leverage with Palmer. Dad, Emma interrupted, you're not medically cleared to leave the house, let alone go to the office. Thomas looked up, his expression determined. I feel fine, Emma, better than fine. You had a hypertensive crisis less than 24 hours ago, Claire reminded him firmly. Your recovery is remarkable, but it's not complete, which is why Robert has arranged for a full medical team to be present, Thomas replied. It will be a brief appearance, nothing strenuous, just enough to show the world that Thomas Mitchell is back. Emma looked to her uncle with clear disapproval. You arranged this without consulting me? Without medical clearance? Robert had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. The board is insisting, Emma. After yesterday's meeting, rumors are flying. The stock dropped 8 points this morning. We need to reassure the market. By risking my father's health? Emma demanded. By allowing me to reclaim my place, Thomas interjected. Not as CEO, not yet, but as the face of Mitchell Innovations. He reached for Emma's hand. You and Robert have done an outstanding job in my absence. I'm not looking to disrupt that, but I need to be part of it again, in whatever capacity makes sense. Lily, who had been observing silently from the doorway, noticed the subtle shift in dynamics. Thomas wasn't fighting to take back control as he had been yesterday. He was seeking collaboration, acknowledgement, participation. The healing that had begun during their connection was manifesting in his approach to his family and business. "What do you think, Lily?" Thomas asked suddenly, drawing all eyes to her. Startled at being consulted, Lily hesitated. "I don't know anything about business." "But you know about healing," Thomas replied. "About balance. Is this too much too soon?" The question held genuine respect for her opinion, unexpected and touching. Lily considered carefully before answering. "I think you need to be honest with yourself about your strength," she said finally, "but also about what will help you heal faster. If being back at your company, even briefly, will bring you peace rather than stress, then maybe it's worth considering." She glanced at Claire. With proper medical support. Claire's professional reserve softened slightly. A very brief appearance might be manageable, with strict limitations and constant monitoring. She fixed Thomas with a stern look. "And you would return home at the first sign of fatigue or stress?" Thomas nodded agreement. "Absolutely." Emma still looked concerned, but her opposition was wavering. "1 hour maximum, and I'll be with you the entire time." "As will I," Robert added, the three Mitchells presenting a united front. The phrase seemed to please Thomas enormously. "The three Mitchells," he repeated, smiling at his daughter and brother. "Just as it should be." The decision made, preparations began immediately. Claire oversaw the medical arrangements while Robert coordinated with the office. Emma helped Thomas select an appropriate suit, one that would disguise his weight loss while projecting strength and authority. Throughout the flurry of activity, Lily remained quietly in the background, watching the family dynamic with observant eyes. It was Robert who eventually noticed her withdrawal. Finding her alone in the hallway as the others prepared, he approached with an expression that was difficult to read. "You won't be joining us at the office, of course," he said, his tone making it a statement rather than a question. "Of course not," Lily agreed. "I'd only be in the way." Robert studied her for a moment. "Something has changed," he observed. "Thomas is different today, more himself, yet also more reasonable." His gaze sharpened. "Did you have something to do with that?" Lily met his eyes directly. "I think Thomas is finding his own way back. I'm just here." "No," Robert disagreed, his voice low. "You're far more than simply here, Miss Walker. I may not understand what's happening between you and my brother, but I'm not blind to the results." He hesitated, then added with obvious difficulty, "Whatever it is you're doing, thank you." The unexpected acknowledgement caught Lily completely off guard. Before she could formulate a response, Robert had moved on, returning to the preparations with renewed efficiency. Left alone in the hallway, Lily felt suddenly adrift. The Mitchells were coalescing into a family unit again, finding their new balance. Her role in their story was becoming less clear. Thomas was healing, physically, emotionally, spiritually. The mysterious connection that had drawn her to him seemed to be serving its purpose. Perhaps soon it would be time for her to go. The thought brought a surprising pang of sadness. Despite her initial wariness, she had grown attached to this family, to Thomas's gentle wisdom, Emma's evolving warmth, even Robert's complicated loyalty. For the first time in years, she had experienced what it felt like to be part of something, to matter to people who mattered in the world, but she had never been one to overstay her welcome. Street survival had taught her when to move on. As the Mitchells prepared for their public reunion, Lily slipped away to the guest house, intending to give them space. But as she crossed the garden, she noticed the pink tint returning to the sky, subtle but unmistakable. The familiar sensation rose within her chest, that pull, that certainty, that knowing. It wasn't over yet. Something more was coming. The Mitchell family departed for the office shortly after noon, a small procession of luxury vehicles carrying Thomas, Emma, Robert, Claire, and additional medical personnel. Lily watched from the guest house window as they drove away, the strange pink glow in the sky intensifying as the cars disappeared down the driveway. Unable to ignore the persistent pull, Lily found herself drawn once more to the memorial clearing in the woods. The stone bench stood as it had before, the small tokens of remembrance undisturbed. But today, there was something different about the quality of light filtering through the trees, a shimmering, almost ethereal illumination that seemed to concentrate around the bench. As Lily approached, a figure materialized on the bench. Not solid, but not quite transparent either. A woman in her early 40s, with Emma's delicate features and a grace that seemed otherworldly. She looked up as Lily entered the clearing, a sad smile touching her lips. "You must be Lily," the woman said, her voice echoing strangely, as if coming from a great distance. "I've been waiting to meet you." Lily stopped short, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" she asked, though some part of her already knew the answer. "Catherine Mitchell," the woman replied. "Or what's left of me, at least." "You're—" Lily struggled to find the right word. "A ghost?" Catherine's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Nothing so dramatic. More like an impression. A memory given form by something that exists between worlds. She patted the bench beside her. "Please sit. We don't have much time." Hesitantly, Lily approached and sat on the bench. There was no physical sensation of another presence beside her, but the air felt charged, vibrating with potential. "You're the one who's been guiding me," Lily realized suddenly. "The pink sky, the pull I feel, it's been you all along." Catherine nodded. "Not intentionally at first. When I passed, a part of me remained tethered to this place, to Thomas and Emma. I've been watching over them, unable to communicate, unable to help." Sadness crossed her ethereal features. "Until you came along. Somehow you can sense the connection I'm trying to make." "Past?" Lily echoed, confusion evident in her voice. "But Robert said you left, that you abandoned your family." "That's what Thomas told everyone," Catherine replied gently. "It was easier for him than the truth. Easier for Emma too, perhaps. Better to be abandoned than to lose a parent to substance abuse." She sighed, a sound like distant surf. "I had problems, depression, addiction. Thomas tried to help, but I refused treatment. Eventually, he gave me an ultimatum. Get help or leave. I chose to leave." "And then?" Lily prompted softly. "And then I destroyed myself," Catherine said simply. "Not quickly, but inevitably. I overdosed in a Paris hotel room 6 months after leaving Boston. Thomas kept it quiet, protected Emma from the details, told everyone I'd simply chosen a new life. He blamed himself, you see. Thought his ultimatum had pushed me away, when really, he was trying to save me from myself." Lily struggled to process this revelation. "So all these years he's been carrying that guilt? And Emma never knew the truth?" "My husband was always very good at compartmentalizing," Catherine said with sad affection. "He locked away the grief, the guilt, the truth, focused on work, on raising Emma, on building something that would last." Her form flickered slightly, as if maintaining it required effort. "When his car crashed 4 years ago, I think part of him was almost relieved. The darkness he'd been holding at bay finally claimed him. But now he's awake," Lily pointed out. "He's healing. Thanks to you," Catherine acknowledged. "You've done what I couldn't. Reached him in that dark place, shown him a path back to the light. But there's one piece missing, Lily. One truth that needs to be spoken before Thomas can truly be whole again. Emma needs to know what really happened to you," Lily guessed. Catherine nodded, her form becoming more transparent. "Thomas needs to tell her. They both need to grieve properly, together. And then," she smiled, a radiant expression that momentarily solidified her presence, "then I can finally let go, move on to whatever comes next." "How am I supposed to make that happen?" Lily asked, anxiety creeping into her voice. "They're at the office making some big public appearance. I can't just show up and start talking about family secrets." "You'll know when the moment is right," Catherine assured her, her voice fading. "You've been guided this far. Trust that you'll be guided the rest of the way." She reached out as if to touch Lily's cheek, though no physical contact occurred. "Thank you, Lily Walker, for seeing what others couldn't, for being brave enough to follow the path laid before you." With those words, Catherine's form dissolved completely, leaving Lily alone on the bench with the weight of revelation pressing upon her. The pink glow in the sky remained, now pulsing gently as if in time with a heartbeat. Whatever connection had brought Lily to this family, to this moment, it was building toward a culmination. The final healing wouldn't be physical, but emotional. The truth that would set both Thomas and Emma free from the prison of secrets they had constructed around themselves. As Lily sat contemplating Catherine's revelation, her phone buzzed. A new device Emma had insisted she accept for safety. The text message was from Claire. "Emergency at Mitchell HQ. Thomas collapsed during press conference, being transported to Mass General. Emma asked me to tell you." The pink glow in the sky flared suddenly, blindingly bright. Lily stood, certainty flowing through her like a current. This was it, the moment everything had been leading toward. Without hesitation, she began running toward the main house, toward Mrs. Abernathy and the car that would take her to the hospital, toward the truth that needed finally to be spoken, toward the light that would dispel 2 decades of carefully maintained darkness. Chapter 7. Into the light. Massachusetts General Hospital hummed with controlled urgency as Lily rushed through the main entrance. Unlike her first visit, when she had slipped in unnoticed, this time she approached the information desk directly, her borrowed confidence making her visible in a way she had never been before. "I'm here for Thomas Mitchell," she said to the receptionist. "His daughter Emma is expecting me." The woman checked her computer. "Mr. Mitchell is in the cardiac unit, 6th floor. I'll need to call up for clearance." "It's all right, Doris. She's with me." Lily turned to find Claire approaching from the elevator bank, her professional demeanor in place but strain evident around her eyes. "How is he?" Lily asked as they walked briskly toward the elevators. "Stable," Claire replied. "It wasn't a heart attack as initially feared, but a severe arrhythmia triggered by stress. The doctors are running tests, but preliminary indications suggest no permanent damage." She gave Lily a sidelong glance. "Emma's been asking for you repeatedly." Something in Claire's tone made Lily look at her more closely. "Is that unusual?" A small smile touched Claire's lips. "Let's just say that Emma Mitchell isn't known for acknowledging when she needs help. The fact that she specifically requested your presence is noteworthy." The 6th floor waiting area was a study in power temporarily derailed. Robert paced near the windows, his phone pressed to his ear as he managed the corporate fallout. 2 men in expensive suits, board members, Lily presumed, conversed in low tones in a corner, and Emma sat alone, her perfect posture a stark contrast to the naked fear in her eyes as she stared at the closed doors leading to the treatment rooms. She looked up as Lily approached, visible relief washing over her face. Without a word, she stood and pulled Lily into a tight embrace. "Thank you for coming," she whispered, her composure cracking slightly. Lily, surprised by the display of emotion, awkwardly patted Emma's back. "Of course. How is he?" Emma pulled back, quickly wiping away the moisture in her eyes. "Physically, he's going to be all right. The doctors say he pushed himself too far too fast." She guided Lily to a quiet corner of the waiting area, away from Robert and the board members. "But something happened before he collapsed, Lily. Something I don't understand." "What?" Lily asked, though some part of her already knew the answer. "He was in the middle of the press conference, doing brilliantly. Confident, articulate, every bit the Thomas Mitchell the world remembers. Then suddenly he stopped mid-sentence and looked straight at me with this expression." Emma shook her head, struggling to describe it. "Like he was seeing me for the first time. He said, 'Emma, I need to tell you the truth about your mother.' And then he just crumpled. The pink sky, Catherine's revelation in the clearing. It all converged in this moment, this hospital, where everything had begun. He's asking for both of us," Emma continued, lowering her voice further. "He's refusing to speak to the doctors until we come in. Says there's something he needs to tell me, and you need to be there." Her eyes searched Lily's face. "Do you know what this is about?" Lily chose her words carefully. "I think there are things in your family's past that need to be acknowledged, truths that have been hidden away too long." Emma's expression hardened slightly. "What do you know that I don't, Lily?" "It's not my truth to tell," Lily replied gently. "It's your father's, but I think I'm supposed to help somehow, to be a bridge." Before Emma could press further, a doctor emerged through the treatment room doors. "Miss Mitchell, your father is insisting on seeing you," and he consulted his clipboard. "A Miss Walker. Against medical advice, I might add." "Is it dangerous for him?" Emma asked immediately. The doctor sighed. "His condition is stable. The greater danger might be the agitation he's showing at being made to wait. He's quite determined." "That sounds like Dad," Emma said with a small, fond smile. She turned to Lily. "Shall we?" Together they followed the doctor through the doors and down a short corridor to a private room. Unlike the last time Lily had seen him in this hospital, Thomas was awake and alert, sitting up against pillows with various monitors attached to him. His color was good, his eyes clear, though his expression was deeply troubled. "Emma," he said as they entered, extending his hand toward his daughter. "Lily, thank you for coming." Emma moved to his bedside, taking his offered hand. "You gave us quite a scare, Dad. The doctor says you need to rest." "I will," Thomas promised. But first, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago." He glanced at Lily. "And I think Lily is here to help me do that." "Help you how?" Emma asked, confusion evident in her voice. Thomas turned back to his daughter, his expression solemn. "Emma, I haven't been honest with you about what happened to your mother." The room seemed to still, as if the very air was holding its breath. Emma's posture stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Mom left us," she said, her tone carefully controlled. "She decided she preferred the jet-setting life to being a wife and mother. What's there to explain?" "That's what I allowed everyone to believe," Thomas said quietly. "What I encouraged you to believe, because the truth was too painful, too shameful." "Dad, you don't need to do this now," Emma said, a note of panic entering her voice. "You're recovering. We can talk about the past later." "No," Thomas said firmly. "I've waited too long already. Kept this burden to myself when I should have shared it with you." He took a deep breath. "Your mother didn't simply leave us, Emma. She was ill. She had been struggling with depression and addiction for years." Emma went very still, her hand tightening around her father's. "What are you saying?" "I tried to get her help," Thomas continued, his voice thick with emotion. "Interventions, therapy, rehabilitation programs, but she refused. In the end, I gave her an ultimatum: get treatment or leave. I thought forcing her hand was the only way to save her." His eyes filled with tears. "I was wrong. She left, and 6 months later she overdosed in a hotel room in Paris." The sound that escaped Emma was barely audible, a small, wounded gasp as if she'd been physically struck. "Mom is dead. Has been dead all this time?" Thomas nodded, tears now flowing freely down his face. "I kept it from you, from everyone. Told the world she'd abandoned us because it seemed less cruel than the truth, less shameful than admitting I had failed to save her." Emma's composure shattered completely. She pulled her hand from her father's, rising from her chair with a jerky, uncoordinated movement. "All these years," she whispered, "all these years I thought she chose to leave us, that she didn't love us enough to stay." "She loved you desperately," Thomas said. "But she was sick, Emma. The addiction had taken hold too deeply. I should have told you the truth, should have let you grieve properly. But I was so consumed with my own guilt, my own grief." "You lied to me," Emma said, her voice rising. "For 20 years, you let me believe my mother chose a life without us when she was actually—" She broke off, unable to speak the word. Lily, who had been standing quietly near the door, felt the familiar pull in her chest, the certainty that guided her steps. Without conscious thought, she moved to Emma's side and gently took her hand. The connection was immediate, not as powerful as with Thomas, but unmistakable. A gentle current of energy passed between them, and with it, understanding. Not memories this time, but emotions. The sharp ache of betrayal, the suffocating weight of 2 decades of suppressed grief, the bewildering realization that the narrative of her life had been built on a foundation of lies. "She needs you to know," Lily found herself saying, the words coming from somewhere beyond herself. "Your mother. She needs you to know that she never stopped loving you. That leaving was her greatest regret, that she's been watching over you, waiting for the truth to come out so you can both finally find peace." Emma stared at Lily, shock temporarily overriding her grief. "How could you possibly know what my mother would want?" "Because she told me," Lily said simply. "This morning in the clearing where the memorial bench is. She's been there all along, Emma, waiting for you and your father to heal together." Under normal circumstances, such a claim might have been met with incredulity or even anger. But here, in this hospital room where miracles had already occurred, where a girl with nothing had awakened a man with everything from a 4-year coma, the impossible seemed merely unlikely. "Dad?" Emma turned to Thomas, seeking confirmation or denial. "I saw her too," Thomas said quietly, "just before I collapsed at the press conference, standing at the back of the room, looking exactly as she did the day I met her." His eyes met Lily's with profound understanding. "That's what you've been doing all along, isn't it? Building a bridge between worlds, helping us connect with what we've lost." Lily shook her head, still holding Emma's hand. "Not what you've lost, what you've hidden, what you've refused to face." She turned to Emma. "Your mother didn't abandon you by choice, and she hasn't really been gone, just out of reach because neither of you would acknowledge the truth of how she left." The monitors tracking Thomas's vital signs showed elevated readings, but not dangerously so. If anything, they reflected the intensity of emotion in the room rather than physical distress. "I don't understand," Emma whispered, tears streaming down her face. "How can you know these things? How can you possibly—" "Because she sees what others can't," Thomas interrupted gently. "Because sometimes the universe sends exactly what we need, even when we don't know we need it." He extended his hand toward his daughter. "I'm so sorry, Emma, for the lie, for the lost years, for robbing you of the chance to grieve your mother properly." Emma stood frozen between her father and Lily, caught in the overwhelming tide of revelation. Then, with a small broken sound, she released Lily's hand and moved to her father's bedside, collapsing against his chest as 2 decades of suppressed grief finally found release. As father and daughter clung to each other, their bodies shaking with the force of their shared pain, Lily felt the strange energy that had guided her begin to dissipate. The connection that had brought her to this family, that had flowed through her to help them heal, was completing its circuit. Whatever purpose she had served was being fulfilled in this moment of raw, transformative truth. Quietly, giving them the privacy their reunion deserved, Lily slipped from the room. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. The pink glow that had become so familiar was fading from her perception, leaving behind only the ordinary fluorescent lighting of the hospital corridor. "You did it," a voice said softly. Lily turned to find Catherine standing beside her, still ethereal, still not quite solid, but clearer than she had been in the clearing, more present somehow. "They're going to be okay," Lily said, not a question but a certainty. Catherine nodded, a radiant smile transforming her face. "Yes, the healing has begun. Thomas has released his guilt. Emma will finally be able to grieve properly, and I—" She looked down at her increasingly transparent hands. "I can finally move on." "Where will you go?" Lily asked. Catherine's laugh was like distant wind chimes. "I don't know, but wherever it is, I'm ready now." She studied Lily with gentle curiosity. "What about you, Lily Walker? Where will you go from here?" The question caught Lily off guard. In the intensity of recent events, she hadn't given any thought to what would come after. "I don't know," she admitted. "Back to the streets, I guess. Now that your family doesn't need me anymore." "Don't be so sure about that," Catherine said enigmatically. "Sometimes the most important connections we make aren't just for a single purpose. Sometimes they're the beginning of something entirely new." Her form began to shimmer, becoming less distinct. "You have a gift, Lily, a rare ability to bridge worlds, not just between the living and the elsewhere, but between people who have lost their way to each other." "I don't know how to use a gift like that," Lily protested. "I don't even understand it." "You don't need to understand it to use it," Catherine assured her, her voice growing fainter. "Just as you don't need to understand love to feel it, or grace to receive it." She was barely visible now, a suggestion of form rather than a presence. "Just promise me one thing." "What?" Lily asked, straining to hear the fading voice. "Don't disappear. Not from them, and not from yourself. You've been invisible long enough, Lily Walker." With those final words, Catherine's presence dissolved completely, leaving Lily alone in the hospital corridor, or not quite alone. Claire approached from the nurse's station, concern evident on her face. "Are you all right?" she asked, taking in Lily's pale complexion and dazed expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Lily managed a small smile at the unintentional accuracy of the nurse's observation. "I'm okay, just tired. It's been intense." Claire nodded sympathetically. "I can imagine. Should I check on them?" She gestured toward Thomas's room. "Not yet," Lily advised. "They need some time alone together. They're healing." Understanding dawned in Claire's eyes. Something important just happened in there, didn't it? Something beyond medical explanation. "The truth came out," Lily said simply. "Sometimes that's all the medicine people really need." Claire studied her with newfound respect. "You know, when I first heard about the mysterious girl who woke Thomas Mitchell from a 4-year coma, I was skeptical. Even after seeing the evidence with my own eyes, I wondered if there was some rational explanation we were all missing." She shook her head, smiling ruefully. "I'm beginning to think some things aren't meant to be explained, just experienced." "That sounds about right," Lily agreed. The door to Thomas's room opened, and Emma emerged, her face tear-stained but somehow lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. She looked around the corridor until her eyes found Lily. "He's asking for you," she said, her voice hoarse from crying but steady. "And so am I." Hesitantly, Lily approached. To her surprise, Emma pulled her into another embrace, this one longer and more deliberate than the first. "Thank you." Emma whispered fiercely in her ear. "For bringing him back to me. For bringing the truth. For whatever inexplicable thing you've done that's helped us find our way back to each other." As they separated, Emma kept hold of Lily's hand, leading her back into Thomas's room. The atmosphere had changed, the heaviness of secrets replaced by the cleaner, sharper pain of truth acknowledged. Thomas looked exhausted but peaceful, the monitors showing stable readings across the board. "There she is," he said warmly, as Lily approached the bed. "Our miracle worker." "I'm not a miracle worker," Lily protested. "I just helped somehow." "More than somehow," Thomas replied. "You were the bridge we needed, between past and present, between what was lost and what remained." He glanced at Emma, who nodded encouragement. "Which is why we've been talking about what happens next." "Next?" Lily echoed, a flutter of uncertainty in her chest. "Your place in our family," Emma clarified. "If you want one, that is." The words struck Lily with unexpected force. Family. It was a concept so distant from her reality that she had stopped allowing herself to even imagine it. "I don't understand," she said carefully, afraid to hope. Thomas shifted slightly in his bed, his expression serious but kind. "Lily, whatever force brought you into our lives, fate, coincidence, Catherine's spirit, the connection we've formed is real. You've helped us heal in ways no one else could. You've given us back to each other. And we'd like you to stay," Emma continued. "Not as a guest, not as some mystical healer, but as part of our family, permanently." Lily looked between them, searching for signs of pity or obligation, finding instead only genuine warmth and something that looked remarkably like love. "You want to adopt me?" she asked incredulously. "In a manner of speaking," Thomas confirmed. "Given your age and circumstances, it would likely be a guardianship arrangement until you turn 18. But the intention would be the same. A home, a family, a future." "Why?" Lily asked, the bluntness of her street years surfacing in her confusion. "You barely know me." Emma smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. "Sometimes you don't need to know everything about someone to recognize when they belong with you. Sometimes you just, feel it. Like a connection," Thomas added softly. "Like being drawn somewhere without fully understanding why." The parallel to Lily's own inexplicable journey to the hospital that first day was unmistakable. She had followed a feeling, a certainty, a pull toward something important. Now Thomas and Emma